Alrighty, this is Dr. Hether with Daytona State College doing PhysioX digestive physiology lab experiment. What we do is we're checking the effectiveness of lipase and bile salts in breaking down fats into fatty acids and monoglycerides. The first experiment uses lipase, which is the enzyme, vegetable oil, which is the substrate, and bile salts. Bile salts is not an enzyme, but it helps emulsifies fat, which turns fat into smaller globulates. And we use a neutral pH. Test tube number 2 is going to be the same as test tube number 1, except for without bile salts. So we're going to see with deionized water and a neutral pH how effective is lipase alone without bile salts. Test tube number 3 is going to have lipase, which is the enzyme. It's going to have deionized water. We're going to use bile salts, and we are going to have a pH of 9. In this one, we are actually missing the fats. So the second experiment involves the fats, the vegetable oil, deionized water, bile salts, and a neutral pH, a pH of 7. And in this one, we're missing the enzyme. And like for experiment number 1, or test tube number 1, we're going to do the same exact thing, lipase, vegetable oil, bile salts, but now we're going to alter the pH. We're going to have this be a acidic pH, pH of 2, and test tube number 6 is going to have more of an alkaline pH. Enzyme, substrate, we're going to add bile salts, and we're going to have this be a pH of 9. All right. Beautiful. Again, we're going to incubate this for 60 minutes, which is going to take about 1 minute in this time frame. The bile salts is actually going to be produced by the liver and stored in the gallbladder, and by breaking down the fat into smaller pieces, it increases the surface area, so there's more fat, if you will, surface-wise for the lipase to work on. Lipase is the enzyme, and again, it should, with bile salts, be more effective than without bile salts. With the presence of a pH of 2 and a pH of 9, we're going to say if altering the pH is also going to denature the enzyme, causing lipase to change three-dimensionally so that it doesn't quite work on the vegetable oil. Again, these enzymes are substrate specific and they're also pH specific. Amylase, pepsin both work good. Amylase and lipase work good at a neutral pH, whereas pepsin works good at an acidic pH because pepsin takes place in the stomach. Alright, so when we liberate and break down the lipase, the vegetable oil is going to break down into fatty acids and monoglycerides. And since fatty acids are acidic, we can check to see the effectiveness of lipase or lipase and bile salts if the pH of the test tubes lowers. So test tube number 1, we start off with a neutral pH, a pH of 7, and we measure the pH and we get to a pH of 6.21. Alright, so when we did have fatty acids present because the acidity lowered the pH. In test tube number 2, when we check the acidity, the pH goes to 6.72. So it did lower, but it didn't lower as much as it did with the bile salts. Test tube number 3 had lipase, it had no vegetable oil, we had a pH of 9, we should remain a pH of 9. This is kind of a control to make sure the pH meter is reading. Test tube number 4, we were missing the enzyme. We started off with a pH of 7. Well, without the enzyme, we're not going to do anything. We had bile salts, but no enzyme. In test tube number 5, we had a pH of 2, and it stays a pH of 2. It was too acidic. The lipase was denatured and wasn't able to convert any of the vegetable oils into monoglycerides or fatty acids. And in test tube number 6, which had a pH of 9, 9's a lot closer to 7, but we go from 9 to 8.97. It lowered it only 0.03, so that wasn't very effective at all. So if we record the data, we can see that the experiment number 1, test tube number 1, had a pH of 6.21, which lowered it. The second one was 6.72. It lowered it, but not as well as bile salts with lipase. But again, lipase is the enzyme. You don't need bile salts. It just increases the effectiveness. And once we got to a pH of 2, we had no effect. The pH remained 2. And even though 9 was close to 7, we went from 9 to 8.97. Again, it was too alkaline. This is a very specific pH, and it works best at a neutral pH of a pH of 7. Thank you.